Hi friends, welcome to another project for Art Class 2. I'm Pat Nepley, I'm your master artist, and I'm going to guide you through the 4 lessons that make up this project. Now, this project today is called Paper Jungle, and you're going to have to watch these lessons in sequence to work along with me, or watch me, pause, do it on your own, and then join me for each successive lesson. I'll be referring to some concepts from our See the Light Art Class 1. So if you're not familiar with that or haven't gone through Art Class 1, you might want to check it out on our website, www.seethelightshine.com. Okay, so for today's lesson, you just need a few items. You'll need more for the whole project, which are listed on the DVD. But just for today, we need a piece of brown 9x12 construction paper, a piece of blue or purple 9x12 construction paper, a good pair of scissors, a sharp pencil, and a great eraser. Okay, so this project that we're going to be working on today is quite different. We're not going to necessarily be doing a lot of drawing. We are going to be drawing, and we're not going to be doing any painting. We're going to be doing something called collage. Now, what is collage? Collage is from the French word that means to glue. And so we're going to be working with a lot of paper and doing a lot of gluing. Now, most collages are a collection of items such as newspaper, pictures, lace, string, paper, all kinds of objects that are glued together to make a nice arrangement. Now, one of the first artists to ever do collage was the famous Spanish artist Pablo Picasso. And so here is one of his early collages. It's called Glass and Bottle of Suze, and it's from 1914. In fact, Picasso was the one who coined the term collage for this type of work. He pasted pieces of newspaper on canvas, and it was a whole new way of having flatter art. This wasn't sculpture, but it wasn't exactly flat like a painting. He and his friend Georges Braque, a French artist, they were the founders of the art movement known as Cubism, and they often worked side by side in the same studio. And they discovered this process of gluing things onto the surface of the canvas to make collage. Now, we're going to be doing collage based on another famous French artist, Henri Rousseau. And this is so exciting for me to have you be part of this kind of project, because I think you'll really enjoy working in a totally different technique or medium than perhaps you've tried before. But like with anything, it takes some practice and some patience to get those really great results that I know that you want to have. Okay, so what about Henri Rousseau? He's a really interesting character. He was born in 1844 in France to a very poor family. His father was a plumber and a tinsmith, and unfortunately, he was still a young man when his father died. So he had to get a job to support his widowed mother. Well, he wasn't a very good student. He did work in a lawyer's office for a little while and tried to study law, but it really wasn't his thing. The only thing, in fact, that he was ever known for in his years of schooling was aptitude in music and aptitude in art. But he didn't have the opportunity to study art beyond his grade school years. So he went to the city of Paris because that's where the jobs were. And he became a customs officer. That meant that he was at the gates of the city, and he would collect taxes from people bringing products to sell into the city. He would check people's luggage and wagons, and he made sure that they paid Paris what they should for bringing items in to sell. So it wasn't a high-paying job, but it was a reliable job, and that's what he needed. Well, Rousseau, because he had this job on the gates of Paris, often would go to the botanical gardens of Paris during his lunch break and spend time there really enjoying the beautiful flowers and plants that were in the botanical gardens. And it started him thinking about wonderful places, and he started to paint. He didn't pick up a paintbrush until the age of 35. He started much later in life. And it's these jungle paintings that Rousseau did that are the inspiration for our project here on Art Class 2. So let's get started. Rousseau would go to the Jardin des Plantes, and that was a wonderful botanical garden in Paris that was opened in 1626. Can you imagine? because the kings and dukes and royalty of that time loved to go to places that seemed far away. And so plants would be brought in from all over the world, things that were not native to France. And it was an amazing place. In fact, they even started a zoo there. You've probably been to a zoo or a botanical garden. You've seen things that don't look anything like what you have in your own neighborhood, and those are exciting places to visit. And that's exactly how Rousseau felt. So let's take a look at one of his jungle paintings right now. This one is called Scout Attacked by a Tiger from 1904. Now what do you notice about this painting? The plants are huge. And in the background you'll see many plants, varied shapes and sizes. And the tiger and the horse and the person are rather crudely drawn. Well, that flat style, my friends, is called naive. And so Rousseau is known as a naive artist, that his drawings are somewhat childlike. Now remember, Rousseau did not have any formal art training. He didn't have the luxury, because he couldn't afford to go to an art school or an art college to study art. So this is all what he did on his own. But that's okay. That's a great way to learn as well, because he would draw and paint all the time in his spare time. Now here's another Rousseau painting called Woman Walking in a Forest. This is from 1905. That woman is also dwarfed by oversized plants. And look at the oranges on the tree. They're the size of basketballs. So Rousseau had trouble with scale. Scale being the size of one object related to others around it. But he spent a lot of time on details. He spent as much time on a single blade of grass as he would on the woman walking in the forest, or an animal, say, in that Scout Attacked by a Tiger. He loved the lush detail of making that jungle very full, very dense. So we're going to be working on a project that we're going to do the same thing, following some basic rules that Rousseau would have if you looked at one of his paintings. So the best way for me to illustrate what we're going to use as our guidelines for this project is to look at this painting right here. And we're going to be looking at this throughout all 4 lessons of this paper jungle project. I love this painting. It's called Surprised because it's a tiger surprised by a storm. Now, you'll notice right away there's an awful lot of shades of green in here, not just one color. Even within this grass that's in the foreground, lots of color. Rousseau used a lot of different shapes of the leaves, not just any one shape. We have long, narrow blades of some type of jungle grass here. We have smaller leaves that are the typical leaf shape. We have very large, dark, spade-like leaves. We have frilly, fringy leaves up here. And I don't know what this is, but it's very interesting plant life. So it was filled with a lot of variety, a lot of shapes, and a lot of colors. Also, you'll notice that the plant life is oversized. So we know what the size of a tiger is. A tiger is larger than a house cat and about probably 6 to 8 feet in length. So that's a known item. So when you're thinking about scale, if you take something that the size is known to most people, then they make a judgment about the size of things around it. So you'll see how large the leaves and the grass are all around this tiger. Oversized foliage. That's one of the hallmarks of a Rousseau painting. The other thing you'll notice is there's not a lot of negative space. By that I mean there's so much going on in here. Lots of objects, trees, branches overlapping with lots of layers of foliage. Very little negative space. We see just a tiny bit of a stormy sky up in this corner. So that means Rousseau has taken time to fill all 3 grounds. The foreground has action going on, the middle ground has a lot going on, and even in the background where there's a storm behind those branches. So his grounds are filled up with a lot of detail. So, variety of shades of green, lots of variety of shapes of foliage, oversized, overscaled foliage, and the grounds are very full, and this results in a very busy, active, dynamic jungle. Now, one thing I noticed looking at Surprised is that this tiger, I don't know, he's close to a real tiger, but not exactly accurate of what a real tiger looks like. So it's kind of an exaggeration. Well, this is part of that naive style I was talking about. Kind of flatter. I don't know that that's exactly what a tiger paw looks like. Tiger paws they're very big, beefy paws. And his face, he's got large eyes and almost a crazed look on his face. So not entirely realistic, but close. And that's something that I want you to remember for when we work on our project. So this is a dynamic painting, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. So that how do we get started on our project? We're not going to be painting something like this that Rousseau did. And you know he spent so much time getting the details of those oversized leaves and all that color. Probably took him quite a long time. We don't have that kind of time for this project. So we're going to work in a different medium, in paper. But we want to use the same rules. So the first thing we're going to do is take our background paper. So it's either blue or purple. And that is going to be where we start. We're going to actually build the various grounds. So the background, then we're going to build our middle ground, all our components, then build our foreground, and everything is going to be glued together to make a collage. So that in the end, you have a very textured, full jungle, all made of paper. So to get started, we're going to work on the trees. So take your brown piece of paper, and you see how it fits right on top of the blue. We're going to use that to our advantage. We're actually going to make two trees, one on each side of our frame of our paper, but we want them to look a little different. So we have to draw first. So let me give you some tips on when you're drawing trees. Now trees grow from the ground up, of course, so that's actually how we're going to start to draw. So we're going to use the one edge of our paper as part of the tree, as if the tree is going off of the frame. So start from the bottom, about 1.5 inches in, and you're going to make not quite a straight line, friends, a somewhat curved line. Now I'm drawing a little bit darker, but we're going to cut this out so you're not going to see these lines. And you can always erase what you don't like. And when you get about 2/3 of the way up, you can see it's somewhat curved. When you get about 2/3 of the way up, you're now going to have a branch that comes out into our composition. So let's go kind of straight, but not entirely straight. No tree grows perfectly straight, so you have to have some movement in it. Now, anything that comes from the trunk directly is going to be thicker than anything that comes from an additional branch. So I'm going to keep that in mind. So very lightly, right above this line I drew, not as thick as my trunk, I'm going to draw another line. And it's not straight, because the bark wouldn't be straight. And I'm going to continue my trunk up, but bend out like I'm making the letter Y. So now I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to make like a letter Y. And you see how this goes off the page. Now any branch that comes off of this first branch will be thinner than the one it came from. And that's generally how trees grow. It starts off thick in the trunk. Those primary branches are a little bit narrower. Any branches from that are even narrower still. And you know that the branches at the far edge of the tree, the newest growth, is the thinnest, and those are twigs. So we're going to make another branch coming off here at a slight angle, and get a little bit narrower and stop. Now we don't want to make too many branches because we're going to spend our time and energy filling our composition with the leaves. So I don't want you to put a lot of work into a lot of branches that aren't going to be seen, but we do need a few for a framework. So I'm making a few branches, and what I simply do is divide existing branches into smaller units, like this. And so that is my first tree for this side. Now I want to do a tree on this side as well, but I don't want it to be a mirror image of this one. I want it to look different. So now that I know where this branch is going, I'll probably make another branch that dips down lower, because trees, even of the same species, will all be different. So start on this side, use the side of the paper as if the trunk is going off the page, come up the side, and I see where this one is, so I want a branch that goes in a different place, and maybe something that goes up here. So it's going to be a little bit thinner than my main trunk, I'm going to split it like the letter Y. And I'm not going to make too many, my friends, because I know I'm going to fill this up with leaves. And I'm assuming the rest of this trunk, the rest of the tree is off the page. Okay, so the last step for this is to cut these out. Now here's the fun part, friends. After we cut these out, you can decide which side you want to put them on, right? Because they'll be reversible. And if you don't like how it fits, with your scissors, you can take something away. So now I'm going to get my scissors and cut these out. All we're going to be working on today is setting up our background. When we're together next time, we're going to be talking about our middle ground and our foreground. As I'm cutting this, I want to talk to you a little bit more about Rousseau, and you can be cutting yours out too. You know, Rousseau was not taken very seriously as an artist, which was really a shame. People thought because he didn't have formal training that he couldn't have been a real artist. And so he was often mocked, and that was very discouraging. But he kept going. He knew that people teased him because of his job as a customs officer, and they knew that he would visit the botanical gardens every day, and so they made fun of that as well. But he kept on painting, and he would show friends, and his friends would encourage him to keep on doing his beautiful jungle paintings. But it must have been awfully hard for Rousseau, and he had to keep working at his job in order to support himself and his mother. So he was very dedicated to his family. We're going to be adding other elements into our collage based on Rousseau, but this is just the first step here. So you see I'm carefully cutting out. The good thing is I don't have to be exactly on the lines because this is not a drawing. This is something where I'm going to use this as a cutout onto my background. So after I've cut, and even if I haven't cut exactly on the lines I drew, I'll be able to see if I like the way that looks, trim off something that I don't like, switch sides if I want. So you can do the same thing. So now I'm going to cut out the other tree. Do you have a good time using scissors? How are you doing there? You know, using scissors well takes a lot of practice. So looks like I'm cutting pretty quickly, doesn't it? That's because I've had a lot of practice with scissors. So if it takes you a little longer to cut well, then simply pause the DVD, do your cutting, and you can catch up with me in a minute. It's important to cut well so that you feel confident for something like this project where we're doing a lot of cutting. In our next lesson, I'll give you some really great tips for how to use scissors. So now I'm almost done my tree. Now friends, if you're left-handed, it's great if you could have left-handed scissors. There really is a difference. I'm right-handed, so I have right-handed scissors. Most standard scissors are meant for those with right hand, but I really do recommend for my friends who are left-handed to get left-handed scissors. They'll feel so much more comfortable for you. Now you'll notice I'm not trying to keep the negative space around the tree as one big piece. It's okay if all these little pieces come out. What's most important is my final cut product. So you see here, so now I have the two trees, and I can decide, do I want them to be this way, or do I want to flip them and do them in reverse? No, I kind of like the original way. This is the fun part, my friends. You're the artist. You get to make all the decisions about how you want your project to be. Now, Rousseau was not appreciated for what he did, who he was, or the paintings that he made. A lot of people didn't like him, didn't like what he did. That was probably really discouraging. Has that ever happened to you? People don't like some things that you do, don't agree with you? That can feel really awful, can't it? I want to encourage you, though, that happened to Jesus. Not everyone liked everything Jesus did. In fact, the religious leaders of the day, they were called Pharisees. They didn't like some things that Jesus did. Let me read you a passage of scripture. It comes from the book of Mark. This is about Jesus. Another time, he entered into the synagogue, and there was a man there that had a shriveled hand. And some of them were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, so they watched him closely to see if he would heal this man on the Sabbath day. And Jesus said to the man with the shriveled hand, "Stand up in front of everyone." And then Jesus asked them, "Which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or to kill?" But they, that means the religious leaders, remained silent. So he looked around them, and he looked on them with anger, and he was deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts. And he said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." And he stretched it out, and his hand was completely restored. And the Pharisees went out, and they began to plot with the Herodians on how they could destroy Jesus. Now see, Jesus knew what the right thing to do was, right? He knew the right thing to do was to heal the man. This guy had been suffering for years. He wasn't worried if the Pharisees would like it. The Pharisees somehow had in their mind that you shouldn't do anything on the Sabbath, including good things like heal someone or help someone. They had taken God's law and really twisted it, and they just wanted to find something that they could nail for Jesus. They just didn't like him and what he was doing. But Jesus stood up for what was right, and he wasn't worried about what the Pharisees thought. Sometimes we worry too much about what other people think, when we should be asking God for guidance, because we always want to do the right thing. And who do we want to please? We want to please God, not other people. So don't get too discouraged when not everyone agrees with everything that you do. Always seek God's guidance first, and go by what his Holy Spirit tells you in your heart, to always do the right thing, not the popular thing. Okay, so next time we're together, friends, we're going to be filling up this jungle with all of our other components. So I can't wait to see you when you join me for lesson 2 of Paper Jungle.